Unaware his pregnant wife owned the company his entire family worked for, Nathan Carter stood in front of 500 Bennett Dynamics employees and poured a bucket of dirty mop water over Camille's head, calling her a pathetic, worthless loser who didn't belong among successful people. His mother laughed. His father nodded in approval. His brother filmed it. His mistress smiled. But what Nathan Carter didn't know as dirty water dripped down his 6 months pregnant wife's face, soaking her modest cream dress while his entire family celebrated her humiliation, was that Camille Bennett Carter wasn't just his wife. She was the sole owner of the $2.3 billion company that paid every single one of their salaries, the company his mother ran HR for, the company his father was VP of operations for, the company his brother just got promoted in, the company that owned the cars they drove, the homes they lived in, the reputations they worshipped. And in 8 days, when the 1-year clause in her late father's will expired, Camille would step out of hiding. But Nathan Carter's cruelty at this gala just moved her timeline up. What she did in the next 60 seconds didn't just crush them, it erased them. Viewers, if your husband humiliated you in front of his entire family while you carried his child, what would you do? Would you forgive? Or would you destroy? Drop your answer in the comments, because what happens next will change how you see loyalty, betrayal, and revenge forever. 40-8 hours earlier, Camille stood in their small apartment bathroom, staring at her reflection in the mirror above the chipped porcelain sink. Her hand rested on the curve of her belly where the baby kicked gently, a tiny foot pressing against her palm like a whispered promise that someone, at least, would love her unconditionally. The bathroom was narrow, the kind where you could touch both walls if you stretched your arms out. The shower curtain hung slightly crooked. The tile grout had turned gray years ago. This was the life Nathan believed they lived together. Modest, humble, struggling, but hopeful. He had no idea that 6 blocks away, in the glass tower that pierced the downtown skyline like a steel needle, Camille's name was engraved on the executive floor directory, not as an employee, as the owner. The woman who signed every major contract, the woman whose approval determined promotions, budgets, and the futures of 5,000 people, including Nathan, including his entire family. She heard his voice from the living room, low and irritated, talking on the phone to someone he thought she couldn't hear. "I don't know why she insists on coming to the gala," he said, his tone sharp with frustration. "She doesn't fit in with these people, Jessica. She's going to make me look weak." Camille's breath caught. She pressed her hand harder against her stomach, as if shielding the baby from the words that cut deeper than any knife. "I know," Nathan continued. "I've been thinking the same thing. After the gala, I'll talk to her. Maybe it's time we reevaluate things, reevaluate." The word hung in the air like poison gas, invisible but lethal. Camille closed her eyes and forced herself to breathe slowly. 8 more days. That's all she had to endure. 8 more days until the anniversary of her father's death, when the law firm would unseal the second part of his will and the world would know the truth. Her father had been specific in his final instructions. "Live as an ordinary woman for 1 full year," the document stated. "Hide your wealth. Hide your power. See who stands beside you when they think you have nothing. Only that person deserves to inherit everything I built." Nathan had failed that test the moment he started whispering about her behind closed doors. She opened the bathroom door and stepped into the hallway. Nathan stood near the window, his back to her, phone still pressed to his ear. He didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge her presence. He just kept talking to Jessica, the woman Camille had seen him with twice now. The woman whose name appeared on his phone screen late at night when he thought Camille was asleep. "I have to go," Nathan said suddenly, ending the call. He turned and saw Camille standing there, her eyes searching his face for something that used to be there, something that had disappeared slowly, like color fading from old photographs. "Who was that?" Camille asked quietly. "Work," Nathan said, slipping his phone into his pocket. "Just coordinating some things for the gala." She wanted to call him a liar, wanted to scream that she knew, wanted to tell him that the company he worked for, the company that paid for the designer suit hanging in their closet, the company that employed his mother, his father, his brother, his sister-in-law, belonged to her, that every promotion he celebrated, every bonus he received, Every ounce of respect he earned inside those glass walls existed because she allowed it. But she said nothing. She just nodded and walked past him toward the kitchen, her bare feet silent on the cold floor. Nathan followed her, leaning against the doorway with his arms crossed. "Are you sure you want to come to the gala tomorrow?" he asked, his voice careful, like he was talking to a child who might throw a tantrum. Camille turned slowly, one hand still resting on her belly. "You don't want me there. I didn't say that. You didn't have to." Nathan exhaled sharply, running his hand through his hair. "Camille, it's not about wanting you there. It's about optics. My family is going to be there. The executives, the CEO. People are going to judge me based on how you present yourself. And you're worried I'll embarrass you. I'm worried you won't understand the environment," he said, his tone hardening. "This isn't a casual dinner, Camille. This is corporate elite. Billion-dollar contracts. People who've spent their entire lives climbing to the top. And you." He paused, his eyes scanning her like she was a problem that needed solving. "You've never worked in that world. You don't know how to navigate it." Camille felt something cold settle in her chest, something that had been building for months, but finally crystallized in that moment. He didn't see her. He saw a burden, a liability, a woman who existed only to make him look small. "I'll stay home," she said quietly. Nathan blinked, surprised. "Really? If my presence embarrass you, I won't come." For a second, relief flashed across his face. Then he caught himself and forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I appreciate that, Camille. I really do. It's a big night for me, for my career. I need everything to go perfectly." She nodded, turning back to the counter where a half-chopped onion sat on a cutting board. Her hands moved mechanically, slicing through the vegetable with steady precision while Nathan stood behind her, already pulling out his phone again, already typing a message to someone who wasn't his wife. "I'm going to take a shower," he said absently, walking away without waiting for a response. The moment she heard the bathroom door close and the water start running, Camille set down the knife and pulled her own phone from her pocket. She opened her messages and scrolled to a name saved simply as R.C. Robert Chen, her father's lawyer, the only person in the world who knew the full truth. She typed quickly, "He wants me to stay home from the gala. He's ashamed of me." The response came within seconds. "Then show up anyway. Let him show you who he really is in front of everyone. You need to see it, Camille. You need to be sure." Her fingers hovered over the screen. Then she typed, "I'm sure." Robert's reply was immediate. "Then it's time. I'll have everything ready." Camille deleted the conversation, slipped her phone back into her pocket, and returned to chopping onions. But this time, the tears running down her face had nothing to do with the vegetables. The Hamilton Grand Hotel rose into the evening sky like a monument to wealth and power, its golden lights spilling onto the street where black cars lined up one after another, releasing men in tailored tuxedos and women in gowns that shimmered like liquid starlight. Valets moved quickly, opening doors, handing out ticket stubs, their practiced smiles never faltering even as they juggled keys and egos. The red carpet stretched from the curb to the entrance, flanked by velvet ropes and photographers who snapped pictures of executives and department heads as they arrived, each one pausing just long enough to be seen, to be admired, to be recorded as someone who mattered. Camille stepped out of an Uber 3 blocks away. She hadn't told Nathan she was coming, hadn't asked for a ride, hadn't waited for permission. She wore the same modest cream dress she'd laid out the night before, the fabric loose enough to accommodate her belly, but plain compared to the glittering parade of designer gowns floating through the hotel entrance. Her hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, small pearl earrings, a touch of blush. She'd tried, but standing on the sidewalk, watching limousines pull up and release women who looked like they'd stepped out of magazine covers, Camille felt the familiar weight of invisibility settle over her shoulders. She walked slowly toward the entrance, her hand resting protectively on her stomach where the baby had been restless all evening, kicking and turning as if sensing the tension radiating through her body. The doorman opened the glass door without really seeing her, his attention already shifting to the next rival behind her. Inside, the lobby stretched wide, and high, marble floors polished to a mirror shine. Chandeliers dripping crystal light from ceilings that seemed impossibly far away. The air smelled like expensive perfume, fresh roses, and ambition. Everywhere she looked, people laughed, clinked champagne glasses, adjusted ties and necklaces, their voices blending into a hum of confidence and success. And then she saw him. Nathan stood near the entrance to the ballroom, his arm casually draped around a woman in a stunning red dress. The woman was tall, elegant. Her dark hair swept into a perfect updo that exposed her long neck and diamond earrings that caught the light with every movement. She laughed at something Nathan said, her hand resting lightly on his chest, her fingers lingering just a second too long to be professional. Camille recognized her immediately. Jessica Rimark, VP of Sales, the woman Nathan mentioned constantly at home, the woman whose name appeared on his phone late at night, the woman he was touching now like they were more than colleagues, more than friends, more than anything Camille wanted to believe. Patricia Carter, Nathan's mother, stood beside them in a silver gown that probably cost more than Camille's entire wardrobe. She leaned close to Nathan and whispered something, her eyes flicking briefly across the lobby and landing on Camille with a look that made Camille's stomach twist. Patricia's expression shifted from neutral to something cold, something sharp, something that said, "You shouldn't be here." Nathan followed his mother's gaze, and his eyes found Camille across the crowded space. For a split second, something flickered in his face. Surprise, maybe, or annoyance, but definitely not warmth, definitely not relief. He said something to Jessica, who turned slowly and looked at Camille with a smile that wasn't kind, wasn't welcoming, wasn't anything except territorial. Camille forced her feet to move forward, weaving through clusters of executives who didn't notice her, past department heads who stepped aside without seeing her, until she stood just a few feet from her husband. The noise of the gala swirled around her, voices and laughter and music blending into a wall of sound that made her feel even smaller. "Hi," she said softly. Nathan's jaw tightened. "You came. I wanted to support you." Patricia stepped forward, her smile thin and cold as a blade. "Camille, darling, how unexpected." The word landed like a slap, wrapped in politeness, but sharp underneath. "I thought Nathan might want me here," Camille said, her voice steady even though her hands trembled slightly at her sides. Jessica extended her hand with a pitying smile, her nails perfectly manicured, her rings catching the light. "You must be Nathan's wife. I've heard so much about you." Camille shook her hand briefly, feeling the slight pressure Jessica applied, the subtle assertion of dominance in a gesture that should have been friendly. "All good things, I hope." "Of course." Jessica's eyes dropped to Camille's stomach, then back to her face. "Congratulations on the baby. That must be overwhelming." The way she said overwhelming made it sound like a burden, like a mistake, like something that trapped rather than blessed. "It's a gift," Camille said quietly. Mark Carter, Nathan's father, appeared then, tall and broad-shouldered in his tuxedo, his presence commanding even in silence. He glanced at Camille with the kind of look reserved for something inconvenient, something that disrupted an otherwise perfect evening. "Nathan, they're starting to seat everyone. We should head inside." Nathan nodded immediately, already turning away. He didn't offer Camille his arm, didn't wait for her, didn't introduce her to the small group of executives hovering nearby, watching the exchange with thinly veiled curiosity. He simply walked toward the ballroom entrance with Jessica at his side, his mother and father trailing closely behind, leaving Camille standing alone in the lobby like a stranger who'd wandered into the wrong event. She stood there for a long moment, the noise of the gala washing over her, feeling the weight of every dismissal, every cold glance, every deliberate exclusion. Her phone buzzed in her small purse. She pulled it out and saw a message from Robert Chen. "You okay?" She typed back quickly, "No, but I will be." His response was immediate. "I'm in the building. 3rd floor conference room. If you need anything, I'm here. And Camille, the board is ready. Just say the word." She slipped her phone back into her purse and walked into the ballroom. The space was breathtaking. Round tables draped in white linen filled the room, each one topped with towering floral arrangements and flickering candles. A stage dominated the far end, backed by a massive screen, displaying the Bennett Dynamics logo in sleek silver letters. A string quartet played softly near the bar where servers in black vests poured champagne and craft cocktails. The ceiling seemed to disappear into darkness above the chandeliers, creating the illusion of infinite space, infinite possibility, infinite success for everyone gathered here. Camille found a seat at a table near the back, far from the stage, far from Nathan's family, far from anyone who mattered. The chairs around her filled quickly with junior employees she didn't recognize, people who smiled politely but didn't engage, people who saw her as just another guest, nobody important, nobody worth remembering. From across the room, she could see Nathan seated at a prominent table near the stage. His entire family surrounded him. Patricia on his right, Mark on his left, Ethan, his younger brother, across from him, grinning at something on his phone. Lisa, Ethan's wife, beside him, adjusting her necklace, and Jessica, seated so close to Nathan their shoulders almost touched, leaning in to whisper something that made him smile. The sight of it, the casual intimacy, the public display, felt like a fist closing around Camille's heart. A server approached her table with a tray of champagne glasses. "Would you like a drink, ma'am?" "Just water, please," Camille said, resting her hand on her belly. "I'm pregnant." The server nodded and disappeared. Moments later, he returned with a glass of ice water and a sympathetic smile that somehow made everything worse. The lights dimmed slightly, and a man in a sharp navy suit stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand. He was the chief operations officer, someone Camille recognized from board reports but had never met in person. "Good evening, everyone." He began, his voice smooth and confident. "Welcome to Bennett Dynamics' annual staff gala. Tonight, we celebrate not just our incredible achievements this year, but the people who made them possible." Applause rippled through the room. Camille clapped softly, her hands barely making sound. "As many of you know, the coup continued. This company was built on a foundation of excellence, integrity, and vision by the late Richard Bennett. And though he's no longer with us, his legacy continues to drive everything we do." Camille's throat tightened. Her father, the man who'd built this empire from nothing, the man who'd taught her that true character revealed itself not in success, but in how you treated people when you had all the power and they had none. Tonight, the coup said, "We have a very special guest joining us, someone who rarely makes public appearances, someone whose leadership has guided this company through one of its most successful years on record. Please join me in welcoming our CEO." The room erupted in applause as a woman stepped onto the stage. Camille recognized her immediately. Margaret Holloway, the interim CEO her father had appointed before his death. Someone trustworthy, someone loyal, someone who knew the truth about Camille's identity and had protected it fiercely for the past year. Margaret took the microphone with a gracious smile. "Thank you all for being here tonight. This year has been extraordinary. Record profits, major expansions, new partnerships that will shape our future for decades to come. And all of it was possible because of you." More applause. Camille watched Nathan lean back in his chair, his expression smug, as if he personally deserved credit for the company's success.
"But tonight," Margaret continued, her tone shifting slightly, "I want to talk about something more important than profits. I want to talk about character." The room quieted, sensing a shift in the evening's tone. "A year ago, we lost Richard Bennett, and in his final wishes, he asked us to honor something he valued above everything else: loyalty, integrity, the ability to see people not for what they can give you, but for who they truly are." Camille's heart began to pound. This wasn't part of the planned program. Margaret was going off script. "Richard believed that power reveals character," Margaret said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent ballroom. "And he wanted to know who among us would stand strong, not when things were easy, but when they were hard. Not when we had everything, but when we appeared to have nothing." Nathan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Patricia's smile faltered slightly. Across the room, Camille felt her pulse quicken. Margaret's eyes swept the room and landed, just briefly, on Camille. "Some of you here tonight have shown extraordinary character, and some," she paused deliberately, "some have shown us exactly who they are." The air in the ballroom felt suddenly heavier, charged with unspoken tension. Camille's phone buzzed. She glanced down and saw a message from Robert. It's time. Margaret is giving you the opening. Take it. Her hands trembled as she typed back. I'm ready. Margaret stepped back from the microphone, her expression unreadable. Enjoy your evening, everyone. We have much to celebrate, and perhaps a few surprises before the night ends. The lights brightened again. The string quartet resumed playing. Conversations picked up, cautious at first, then louder as people tried to make sense of what they'd just heard. At Nathan's table, Patricia leaned toward her son, whispering urgently. Jessica touched Nathan's arm, her expression concerned. Mark's face had gone hard, his eyes scanning the room as if searching for threats. And in the back of the ballroom, Camille stood slowly, smoothing her cream dress over her belly, feeling the baby kick once, twice, as if urging her forward. She picked up her small purse and walked toward the exit, not away from the gala, but toward the private elevator reserved for executives and board members. The elevator that led to the third-floor conference room where Robert Chen waited with documents, lawyers, and the full force of her inheritance ready to be unleashed. As she passed Nathan's table, he glanced up and saw her leaving. Relief washed over his face. Good, his expression seemed to say. She's leaving. Problem solved. But Camille didn't leave the building. She stepped into the executive elevator, pressed the button for the third floor, and watched the doors close on the ballroom, on the gala, on the life where she'd been invisible, dismissed, humiliated. When the doors opened again, Robert Chen stood waiting, a folder in his hands and a look of fierce determination in his eyes. Are you absolutely sure? He asked. Camille took the folder, opened it, and looked at the documents inside. Transfer of power, official announcement, board authorization, everything she needed to step out of the shadows and into the light. I'm sure, she said. Robert nodded. Then let's go remind them who really owns this company. Camille walked back into the ballroom with her shoulders straight and her head high, no longer the invisible woman in the modest cream dress, but someone carrying the weight of truth like armor. The gala continued around her, laughter and champagne, and the clink of silverware against fine china. Everyone too absorbed in their own importance to notice her return. She moved through the tables slowly, deliberately, her hand resting on her belly where the baby kicked, as if sensing what was about to happen. Robert Chen followed 3 steps behind, 2 security guards flanking him, their presence subtle but unmistakable. Nathan saw her first. His face shifted from confusion to irritation as she approached his table. Camille, I thought you left, he said, his voice low and tight. What are you doing back here? I needed to get something, she said quietly, her eyes meeting his. For the first time in months, she didn't look away, didn't shrink, didn't apologize for existing. Patricia leaned forward, her smile razor thin. Dear, this really isn't the place for drama. Perhaps you should go home and rest. You look exhausted. Jessica touched Nathan's arm possessively, her red dress catching the light. Nathan has a big night ahead. Maybe it's best if I what? Camille interrupted, her voice calm but carrying an edge that made Jessica's words die in her throat. If I disappear, if I stop embarrassing my husband, if I remember my place? Nathan stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. That's enough. You're making a scene. Am I? Camille asked, looking around at the tables near them where people had started to turn, to watch, to sense that something was breaking open right in front of them. Mark Carter rose to his full height, his voice dropping to a threatening rumble. Young lady, I suggest you leave before you do something you'll regret. The only regret I have, Camille said, her voice steady, is that I waited this long. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small remote. Nathan's eyes narrowed. What is that? Camille pressed a button. The massive screen behind the stage, the one displaying the Bennett Dynamics logo, flickered once, then changed. A document appeared, blown up large enough for everyone in the ballroom to see. Last will and testament of Richard Allen Bennett. The room began to quiet, voices dropping to confused whispers. Nathan stared at the screen, his face pale. What are you doing? Showing them the truth, Camille said. She pressed the remote again, and the will scrolled to a specific paragraph, highlighted in yellow. I hereby bequeath the entirety of Bennett Dynamics, including all assets, holdings, and executive authority to my daughter, Camille Marie Bennett, on the condition that she live 1 full year as an ordinary citizen to test the character of those closest to her. The silence that fell over the ballroom was absolute. 500 people stopped breathing at once. Patricia's champagne glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Mark's face went from red to white. Ethan's phone clattered onto the table. Jessica stepped back from Nathan like he'd suddenly caught fire. And Nathan just stood there, his mouth opening and closing, no sound coming out. "My name," Camille said, her voice carrying clearly through the stunned silence, "is Camille Bennett, daughter of Richard Bennett, owner of this company, owner of every building, every contract, every salary being paid here tonight." She paused, letting the words sink in like stones dropping into deep water. "Including yours." Nathan finally found his voice. "That's impossible. You're just..." "Just what?" Camille asked. "Just your unemployed wife? Just the woman who embarrassed you? Just the burden you complained about to your mistress?" Jessica gasped. Patricia grabbed her husband's arm. The entire ballroom watched, transfixed. Camille turned to face the room, her voice stronger now. "For 1 year I lived as you thought I was, nobody, and I watched. I saw who had integrity when they thought no one important was looking. I saw who was kind, who was cruel, who deserved to be here." Her eyes returned to Nathan's family. "And who didn't?" She nodded to Robert Chen. He stepped forward and handed her a folder. She opened it and began to read. "Patricia Carter, terminated effective immediately for harassment and hostile work environment. Mark Carter, terminated for misuse of company resources and ethics violations. Ethan Carter, terminated for..." "You can't do this!" Nathan shouted, his voice breaking. "You can't just destroy people's lives." Camille looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing except the ghost of what she once believed was love. "You poured dirty water on me, Nathan, on your pregnant wife, in front of everyone." And your family laughed. The room erupted in whispers. Phones came out. People started recording. "Security," Camille said calmly. "Please escort the Carter family from the building. Their access badges are revoked. Their belongings will be mailed." Nathan lunged forward, desperation twisting his features. "Camille, please. I didn't know. If I'd known, I never would have..." "That's exactly the problem," she said softly. "You only care now that you know who I am. When you thought I was nobody, I deserved dirty water." Security moved in. Nathan reached for her one last time, but she stepped back, her hand protective over her belly. "Don't touch me. Don't ever touch me again." They were escorted out, all of them. Patricia screaming about lawyers, Mark silent and defeated, Ethan crying, Jessica running in her red dress, desperate to distance herself from the wreckage. The ballroom watched them go, the fall of an entire family captured on dozens of phones, uploaded in real time, spreading like wildfire. When the doors closed behind them, Camille turned to the room. "This gala will continue. You all earned your place here. Celebrate. You've worked hard." She paused, tears finally sliding down her cheeks. "And remember, character isn't who you are when people are watching. It's who you are when you think no one important can see you." She walked out of the ballroom to thunderous silence, one hand on her belly, the baby kicking like applause. 8 days later, she officially stepped forward as CEO. Nathan filed for divorce. She signed the papers without hesitation, and when her daughter was born 3 months later, Camille named her Grace. Because grace, she learned, was something you gave yourself when the world refused to give it to you. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story about justice, revenge, and the strength it takes to know your worth. Drop a comment telling us, would you have forgiven or destroyed? And let us know where you're watching from. We love hearing from you. See you in the next one.